Hello and welcome to First Dollar Academy. My name is Jeremy Mohue. I'm so glad you tuned in. This podcast is for anyone that wants to start their own business but doesn't know where to begin. If you've ever dreamed of calling something your own, you're in the right place. I'm so thrilled to be joined by my friend Mike Rumelhart. Mike is the CEO and founder of Opsheet, the premier M&A platform. Mike has nearly a decade of experience in investment banking and saw an issue with how to source deals. So instead of accepting the status quo, Mike decided to roll up his sleeves and start his own business. Mike's journey is particularly relevant to those listeners who don't know where to begin, but just have an idea. You'll hear how he started as a green young kid in investment banking to now being the founder of his own startup. So sit back, enjoy, and listen to how Mike Rumelhart is changing an industry that's been around for over 100 years. Mike, welcome to First Dollar Academy, man.
How we doing, Jeremy?
What's going on?
Congratulations on the start up of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm very
First Dollar
excited.
Academy.
I've actually been wanting to do this with you for a really, really long time, especially after you got all of your things going, like all the things that you've started thus far. I know that you've been almost at it for like a year, but yeah, I just want to kind of sit you down and figure out exactly how you did this and what are some of the things you learned. So for those who don't know Mike Rumelhart, I mean, how would you describe yourself? What's your story?
Pretty open and transparent individual. So that's the first thing, and it's probably going to be really beneficial for this podcast. It might step on some toes and create some enemies in it, but that's okay. Just a guy from the Midwest, small Iowa town that left the farm town and we moved to the big city. This is a hallmark.
What town were you from? What town are you from?
I'm from Iowa City, Iowa. So it's not that big. I mean, it's not that small. But in relation to many of the cities I've lived in since then, Houston, Dallas, Chicago, pretty small space.
What was your household like growing up?
Two great parents and a younger brother that often got beat up a little bit.
He got beat around, got pushed around.
Exactly. But grew up playing soccer, and went to college to do that. It was kind of my only D1 offer type of situation, and went to Drake University, and which is just down the road. Just far enough that my mom can't, just show up whenever she wanted to, even though I'm sure she wanted to all the time. But yeah, it was a good life. A lot of riding bikes around. It's a place where you don't have to lock your doors or anything. Chicago's a little different.
Yeah, definitely.
So, it was. It's not much to like really kind of talk about with that. It's had a great family, nothing to complain about there. Went to a smaller school that people that I knew from kindergarten through 12th grade I graduated with. So a very tight knit, close group of friends there.
So I met you obviously a little over 6 years ago, and I got to learn about your story. I think one of the things that's really unique about you is that you watched your parents like work super hard coming up. I guess like how has that impacted you, today and like going through this venture, some of the challenges you face, like talk a little bit about like how your parents have like impacted you to kind of push through that stuff.
Yeah, both of my parents are very kind of business mindset people. My mom was, I think, the first employee that was hired at a company called Babbage's down in Dallas, Texas. I was actually born in Dallas, but only lived there till I was 5. I don't say I'm from there or anything, but and she was often gone, traveling, opening up, Babbage's locations. Babbage's is now GameStop. So she had, founder shares and equity in that, and she sold that long ago.
Yeah.
That's probably her biggest regret if she was sitting in the seat. But and then moved up to Iowa, and my dad started a business. It was a medical supply company called Heartland Medical, and that ended up getting sold in 2008 or so. So I was always kind of around like business-minded people. and really, that's kind of the only path. I could never have been a doctor. I fainted, when I drew a little bit of blood, or at the doctor's office. I fainted when I got my ears pierced in high school.
Because you're cool. You're one of the cool guys.
Yeah, I thought that would have been cool. I think they're actually still. I haven't worn earrings in 15, 20 years now, but
right.
I think. I thought, went through a little stage there. Who doesn't go through those stages?
No. So then you obviously have that upbringing, entrepreneurs in your home. You kind of see how they operate, see how they work. You go off to school and like, you majored in your major for a particular reason. Talk a little bit like about what went into that decision and how you, kind of just like dove in headfirst.
Yeah, I first got to Drake, and I was just kind of like general business major at the start of it. I don't think anybody falls in love with accounting, but I ended up being double majoring in accounting and finance, and the soccer thing didn't really pan out for me at Drake. I spent all 4 years playing, but I tore my ACL at the end of my freshman year. Covered, came back, and then tore my ACL again, the same one, my sophomore year. And I kind of realized, like, okay, I'm never going to get, like, a full scholarship. But I really just sat there in one of my finance classes, and I just Googled, like, if you have an accounting and finance major, what is the most high-paying job you can possibly get into? And it pointed me towards investment banking. And
you didn't know anything about that until the point?
I had no idea what it was. No, I knew that bankers had represented my dad in selling his business, and I always thought, like, that's kind of cool. You're just hopping into a business for 6 to 12 months and creating these spreadsheets and presentations and then selling a company, and you're just doing that over and over again. And I was like, I had a general sense, but I really had no idea anything about it. So ended up, not even getting into an investment bank right off the start. I went to a company called Mid-American Energy Holdings, but at the time, that's what it was called. Now it's called Berkshire Hathaway Energy. It's a utility conglomerate owned by, the Berkshire, Warren Buffett, based there in Des Moines, Iowa. So I spent the first 2 years, doing M&A stuff, but from like an internal perspective, which is now considered what's called corp dev or corporate development. Went through a few big acquisitions with that. So I was in those integration processes, and I was, kind of doing kind of financial, like quick financial and, valuation analysis on, different portions of their business and how they could integrate into portions of our business. And, but I kind of realized that, what I wanted to do was, be on the representation side, because I thought it was just really interesting stuff. I kind of realized that, double majoring in accounting and finance, accounting is very backwards looking, whereas finance is very forwards looking. You're creating projections, and, maybe just in my mindset, I was like, I don't want to look backwards and, debits and credits and all that good stuff. I wanted to, it was a good foundation to have, but, going forward, I wanted to do, be the guy projecting things and coming up with the analysis and the targets that we need to hit. So that was, what kind of drove me to leave Berkshire Hathaway and kind of go get the more formal investment banking training.
And so, yeah, tell me about that journey, because I know it was a long, windy one. And talk a little bit about, like, just, and I know that, again, your parents were always working and, always tending to the business, and how many hours you put in, like, just on a normal day.
That was the one thing I didn't know about, the hours that is required. So I guess to provide a little bit of context to anybody listening to this, which I'm sure there are millions right now. Millions of people. It's investment banking is now, when you say investment banking, now that's a very large structure, a big bank. They do a lot of things, but most investment bankers are in the business of M&A or capital raising. So investment banking is, we are very much so like real estate agents. You know, if you are selling your home for $500,000, you'll hire a real estate agent. What that person will do is, you know, go off and, you know, identify buyers, market, you know, your home, show your home, you know, create marketing materials and disperse them out to potential buyers and you know, negotiate on your behalf, and now just replace like the $500,000 house with a $500 million business, and that's being sold. And you know, an investment banker is, you know, representing that business, that person selling that business. It could be shareholders or a board, or you know, a family-owned manufacturing company. And there's many different structures and things, but really at the basis of it, M&A, investment banking is really just being a real estate agent. You know, so there's coverage M&A groups. These people are just pure play. You know, find a client that's selling something, whether it's an asset, a segment of itself, or itself entirely, and then find buyers for that and representing that client. And then there's kind of coverage, or there's, you know, equity capital markets, debt capital markets groups that will always kind of be there on the fringes of any, you know, to offer capital solutions. Right. Whether, you know, if you're trying to buy a business, you might go raise a bunch of equity or raise a bunch of debt to fund that purchase. So, you know, we kind of work hand in hand with, and those people are, you know, just as much investment bankers as, you know, M&A coverage bankers. Right. But you're really usually syndicate or kind of separated into industries. So, you know, like when I was at Rothschild, I was working in the industrials group. You know, when I was at Raymond James, I was in the energy group, but I was focused on renewable energy and clean tech. And Moelis is a little different. They, you know, and when you're kind of a junior banker and that analyst or associate years, you're a generalist, so you could be working in many different industries. So yeah, I guess that's a little context about what banking is. But you know, to go back to your question about the hours, that was something I didn't really prepare myself for. But you know, I mean, you're typically working, you know, as an analyst, especially when you graduate from college, you come in as an analyst for 2 to 3 years usually, and you are working 80, 90, 100 plus hour weeks, depending on, you know, how busy your group is. But and that's tough. That's kind of a slap in the face. But you just learn to live and breathe your job. There are canceled plans. I think one of my first years in banking as an analyst, when I was actually at MUFG in their corporate advisory group, and just a Japanese bank that are pretty prevalent in the oil and gas space in Houston. I remember working on a deal, and I called my parents, and I was like, I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving. There's absolutely no way. And my parents flew down for Thanksgiving. We had a little small ass turkey in the oven. You know, I had a 600 square foot studio apartment, and just all cramped in there. And you know, I spent 4 hours for Thanksgiving. I've had many holidays like that. Right. Usually one Christmas, when I was actually up here in Chicago, when I first moved here and I was working for Moelis as an associate, I was just off in another room with my laptop, my headphones in, cranking away on documents and, you know, getting things prepped for a big sell side we were launching. While everybody else was, you know, I could hear them in the kitchen, drinking, having a good time, cheersing, eating a bunch of stuff, and I was just well, this is what I signed up for. This is paying off the student loan bills.
Yeah. So you know, and we've talked a lot about that kind of lifestyle and how it wears on you over time. How is that working in investment banking? How did that shift your worldview, and what were things that you learned, you know, both positive and negative from that experience?
Yeah, there's a lot of positives. Actually, when I first moved up to Chicago and I was working for Moelis, the founder and CEO of Moelis, Ken Moelis, was actually he came to Chicago, and we're all kind of eating lunch with him in the conference room, and he was kind of explaining our impact that we have on the business is much larger, you know, than we could ever imagine. And he said, kind of something that stuck with me is, he said, you know, most of you, by the time, you know, you've spent 2 or 3 years here, you know, from the time you're 22 to 24, 25 years old, will have done more M&A deals than 95% of public company CEOs. And you learn a lot from that. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, that's pretty impactful stuff.
Right.
And it kind of lays a foundation for you going forward, whether that's in banking or exiting into private equity or corp dev or hedge funds, whatever you end up doing, or being an idiot like me and starting your own business. Kind of lays a good solid foundation about, okay, where do I want to get to in like 3-4 years to make this company look, like a viable target. I'm trying to build something now that I know could be inserted as a massive asset into many other businesses. But right now I want to do it all by myself, raise the value as high as I possibly can.
In your, career path in investment banking, there's like a huge kind of, point in your life where you're like, okay, well, I don't think this is for me anymore. So talk a little bit about that experience and like what changed for you, and then, how you kind of finally made the decision to leave.
Yeah, well, one of the things that investment banks do really well is they pay you just enough money to where you're like, okay, when you get your bonus, you're like, that, like, I'll stick around another year. And then, so like that scale always goes up. And it's not like other corporations where, you move up based on stature. Really, it's because it's just very, very highly competitive and cutthroat. You start out as an analyst 1, and next year you move to analyst 2, next year you're analyst 3, and then they decide, are you good enough to be an associate? And if you're not, and most aren't, you're just cut. And if you are, want to become an associate, at that point as well, the good ones all exit, because investment banking is very similar to getting a college degree for other jobs that people in this industry want to go into. So I guess there's that stature. So then you become an associate and you work for 3 years. It's an associate 1, associate 2, associate 3. Some banks are different. They do like a stub year, and or whatever. I don't even need to go into explaining that, but at most you're working for 4 years as an associate. But then, and those are really like the highly technical positions. You are deep into the trenches of Excel, PowerPoint, moving logos around on a screen and creating these like marketing decks that are being dispersed out to potential buyers, and most of which are major private equity firms that are trying to invest in your client that's selling its business. And then there's a point where you go from associate to a vice president. I went to Moelis as an associate, and I left there to join Rothschild & Co. Back in 2022, and I actually just lateraled over there because it was kind of like an off-cycle thing, and spent 8 months as an associate, and they promoted me to VP. Worked on a few transactions. It was kind of a dull year for the M&A industry, but managed to kind of help out on a very large transaction. About 3-4 months later, the market's taken a pretty big toll on M&A, and they fired me. They call it RIF. They pay out for 3 months. A little bit of a bonus, but. And I kind of like realized at that moment in time that I was like, I could go and, you sit in all these boardrooms and you listen to these people talk, and you're like, these people got here by building something themselves. They didn't just advise people to build things. They took a huge risk to go build something, and I realized that, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And the only industry that I know is investment banking. Right. So I built a product for, connecting investment banks and, private equity and family offices. And, I wanted to build a more connective environment. It's like, going back to my, real estate analogy of what investment bankers do. Like, this is an industry that, operates as like the real estate industry did back in the early 90s. Like, if you wanted to buy a business or go buy a home, you'd have to drive around and look for sale signs. You'd have to just know a real estate agent that has a good few listings. It was all about who you know and what you're driving around and happen to stumble upon. So I wanted to build something that really connected the institutional investment banking, private equity industry.
So let me ask you this question: in a world where, and I'm so glad that we transitioned over to the product. let's just say you're successful in building this product. What will it mean for the world of investment banking? What will it mean for a VP?
Yeah, I mean, I'm building something that I would have loved to use as a VP or as an associate, but this started really, when I, had just been riffed from banking, and I still had, people that I used to work for, calling me and saying like, "Hey, Mike, I think you're really close with this P firm. Could I get an intro? Or we're doing this sell side. Like, I know you're close with this family office." And I kind of realized like, okay, I never really left, but now I'm not getting paid for it. And I was like kind of thinking one day, like, I wish there was just like, I could just build myself a portal and like, here's all of Mike's contacts. And, if you want me to make a, intro, if you have like a sell side or something that you're going to market with and you need an intro to this family office or something, I would, want like some kind of portal. But, and that was kind of like a facetious, idea that I had, but I kind of realized like, I mean, that doesn't really exist out there. And, so I just kind of got the idea to build it, and I had no idea what I was doing. I'm not a technical person in terms of like being able to write code or anything. So, there's a lot of like concepts in tech that I was very unfamiliar with. Like somebody, said, oh, what about the UI UX interface? And I was like, what the hell does that mean? And I Googled UI acronym, and like nothing came up. Like University of Illinois came up. So I had no idea what it was and like how to do it. What are like the components? I just had this idea of, here's this platform I have in my mind. Here are how things should be connected. Here are the kind of features that I want to build into it. And thankfully I went to this kind of like founder, meetup thing, and a guy knew a tech team that was located onshore and was really good. And they built, one of the two guys worked at Lazard, a major investment bank. So he understood like the relationship that, we have from bankers to PE firms to family offices to strategics. And then the other guy and, this development team, has built enterprise level software with high needs of security, because on this platform there's very high potential for, non-proprietary information being on this thing. If somebody got into it and that wasn't supposed to be in there, and there's a public company that's selling, a segment of itself that could, very much impact the stock price of this company, bad actors are going to want to, pop in, look around. So, security is like kind of like the biggest thing on my mind constantly. And thankfully, like we've got a very solid foundation of that. But yeah, then, I mean, and then, you don't even know like what you're really doing day after day. And like, we were just talking before this, and, you kind of just wake up and you're like, how can I drive a little bit of growth today? What customers can I talk to? What investment banks, what private equity firms, and, that I can talk to, like, to get those users onto my platform even before it's built. But, just to see if they are interested in something like this.
So if we back up a little bit, and I love the way that you transition to, having a problem and trying to solve it for a specific user base. Once you like identify that problem and start speaking with some of the folks that you always worked with in the past or knew you through different circles, I mean, how hard was it to? Did you use your own money to build this thing? Because you were introduced to the folks that are helping you build it. I guess you don't have a technical co-founder really, and you're really focused more on the business side of this particular product. What were the next steps to like finally figure out, okay, how do I even like start? Like where is the first place I start? And then like how has that momentum like carried you to today?
Yeah, when you're not technical, like you're unable to write code or Python, Java, C++, whatever it is. Like, I mean, I thought like I actually bought a book called like Python for beginners or something, and I was like, maybe I can just learn this. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know like what legal agreements do you need in place? Who do you need to talk to? What software's out there to help you do various things? Whether it's building an application or not. But there's also a lot of predators out there.
Sure.
There are, incubators that are, we'll build that. It will take like 3 weeks. And then they like looked at me like I'm an idiot. And they're also going to take 15% of your business. And me being kind of more of a traditional approach, like, no, I want to build this like a solid foundation, because the way that you're pitching it to me is like, yeah, we'll build it in 3 weeks. Like, okay, sounds like, if a bug breaks, how the hell are you going to fix it? So I wanted like real, like people that, fit into this business well, understood it well, and, were there to like take the solid, first steps of building it. But that took 5 months to find those people.
Wow. You're scout. I mean, and I know that there's a bunch of different organizations here in Chicago that you were able to link up with and kind of just begin networking to figure out who these people are. But like at that particular time, that's like your everyday. You're working up just trying to find people to help you, right?
Yeah, so actually, just to start at day one, the day that I got fired was a Friday at 9 in the morning. And I even told my fiance, she was like sitting in the kitchen. I was like, it's not very often this manager, like this head of the office, schedules a 9 a.m. meeting on a Friday. With you one-on-one in a boardroom. And I was like, prepare yourself, I might get fired. and I kind of knew like it was going to happen. So that happens. I hop on the train. I get back to, my place. I walk in at like, back into my apartment where my fiance, who doesn't work, she does, work from home on Fridays. So she's still sitting at the kitchen. She's like, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, babe, I was just fired. So I bought a Lenovo ThinkPad. It shipped, arrived like a few days later or something, and then I just started creating a marketing deck of, really it wasn't a marketing deck, it was just like trying to put my ideas on paper. And all I know are Excel and PowerPoint, and I made this like 30, 40, 50 page PowerPoint of like, here's where I see a problem, here's what I'm going to broadly provide a solution. Here's here's the landing page. Here's, the deal feed. Here is, the deal tool, how it works, and like how I view it. I just started sketching all of my ideas, onto, a PowerPoint, formatted it and started sending it to people in the industry. But I don't know, like, do I start it as a corporation, like a C Corp? Do I, or an LLC, and I decided to join an organization here in Chicago called 1871, which does a really good job at, helping early stage founders, just check the boxes of what you need to do. And I wish I had joined it sooner, because, they hold like classes and stuff. Like, here are what legal agreements you need to know. Here are, ways to fund your business, and here are pitch competitions that you can go to, or, here's a whole network of people that don't belong to 1871, but they're mentors, like right. From anything from legal to VCs to, other people that have founded businesses through the 1871 program. There's just a single place to like answer the questions that you have, like right. Any first-time founder has. And because the industries that I had, worked in and advising are all very highly capital intensive businesses, like oil and gas, energy, industrials, These are companies that, okay, if you want to start a manufacturing company, you need a few $1 million to go and build a little warehouse and, get all this capital for, raw materials that you want to turn into something, or you need $5 million to go drill a well somewhere. So, right. I didn't know, like I needed to raise money, because I knew that, building it would be, fairly expensive, but I had a lot of, banking was good to me enough to, bootstrap it, to a certain point. And then, I've heard about what's called a SAFE, and I heard about Y Combinator. I had to Google, what the hell SAFE meant, so I started just downloaded a form that you can do all online of like a Y Combinator, post money safe, and I literally created this valuation model to how much like I wanted my cap to be on the safe. And I was like a few days into it, like creating this big model. I created this, safe at a $5 million cap. And then when I went out to investors and I kept it a very like close network, I raised money in $25,000 increments because that was like very simple math. Like I wouldn't have to get into the math with them.
Right.
It's something that people can understand. Okay, if you invest in this $25,000 with me at a $5 million cap, that is equal to 0.5%. 50,000 is 1%. That's how much money that's how much equity you get. Right. So I, just try to make it easy.
At this point, all you had was a deck, and then you just sent it off, or what was your strategy in getting in front of these folks that could help fund you?
I started to talk to in this like mentorship program thing with Y Combinator. I just started to like talk to YC or VCs or venture capital, people at venture capital firms. I wasn't like trying to raise money, but I was just kind of like, how do I start I would ask the very simple question is like, how do I start a company that will never raise any red flags to you? And like, there's certain boxes you need to check, like, very simple boxes, like don't start as an LLC, we want to see that you're a C Corp because we want to be on the board someday if we actually do invest in this thing. You want to have a very clean cap table. You want to show user growth. You want to show that you're experienced in this industry that you're trying to target or you're targeting and you're trying to tackle. One guy, he like stopped me in the middle of it and he hadn't said a word yet in this entire meeting because he asked me to just explain about the business, all that stuff. He's like, "Hey, Mike, I never want to hear you say VC again." And I was like, what? Like, like how am I going to, he's like, build something where that you will never need VC money. That entirely changed my perspective because, every dog and its mom is a VC, in a place like Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, LA. Everybody knows one of the, some random person in a VC. And you kind of realize, well, there's a lot of people that go to, this is the only industry where VC, like they're like the funding mechanism of this industry can actually deteriorate your business.
Right.
And I kind of realized like, wow, this guy is very right. You don't want to build something that VC, that will eventually need VC money. So build a cash flowing business that can grow and scale. And so I took that to heart and I just started, trying to do that. And every decision that I made going forward, any changes to the prototype I had was to, provide value to one person.
Right.
And if that person found it valuable, it's more than likely that more people will find it valuable.
Just to recap, so, you have your last day in investment banking. You start essentially kind of, connecting with people, thinking that like, where's my next opportunity? It dawns on you, there's this idea that I have to, really kind of disrupt the industry. You go get a little bit of funding, connect with different firms, and obviously hire your developers to start building. So now we're at the point where Mike, the former investment banker and new founder, is learning a lot about technology and how you build an application, not just for the fact of providing value to your customer, but also doing it in a way that you can like scale, right, to bring on more people. What have been some of the lessons that you look back now, you're like, wow, that was a learning that I had no idea about that has really encapsulated like my experience so far?
There's tons of those. I spent 4 months just like pitching the idea to people, just kind of showing the deck to people, not even people that I wanted to raise money from, just I wanted people to poke holes through this. Well, once we explained it and everything, like there was definitely people that, poked holes, and people still do, continue to today. And it's just good to like listen to those things, prioritize, if they should be implemented or not, or when they should be implemented. But right now it's just, we're just building a product that will satisfy the minimum standard of what we're trying to ultimately accomplish.
When you get funding like that, especially from friends and family, it becomes less of a green light to move forward and more of a responsibility to build something that ultimately gets them their money back at the very least.
Yeah.
And so I suppose, apart from that, what else keeps you up at night?
Dude, so the thing, that's a good question, because literally, if you just work a normal corporate job, you can really turn off the problems that you had at that day at the office. You can, go home, eat dinner, and watch some TV with your fiance or whatever, play with the kids. And then those problems still persist the next day, but like you're kind of figuring out, have a whole team. But when you're founding a business and you've accepted money from a lot of people you care about, there's no celebrating anything. When we launch at the end of this week, I'm not going to pop a bottle of champagne. One, because I can't afford it. Two, because that launching something, I like celebrating every little step in this process is just non-existent for me. And I understand that there are certain times that, celebrating something should be, done. But I'll celebrate when we sell this thing. You spend every day just worried about a problem. There's problems that pop up, every hour, every minute, and you just try and tackle every one of those problems. And once you tackle that problem, you don't celebrate that you tackled or you got a solution, like, okay, this is good. You just move to the next thing. So it's kind of exhausting because there's no time to celebrate. There's no time to, celebrate an achievement or something. You just move to the next problem. So every single day, even on the weekends, late at night, I wake up, at 2, 3 in the morning. I'm kind of think oh, this is what we should do. And this is just constantly on your mind. And you forget about all the problems you've gotten solutions to. You're just thinking about the next problem to tackle.
What is next for this business as it continues to grow, right? So, you talked a little bit about the funding that you've received, and then ultimately getting your user base on board and trying to test and figure out all the kinks and the bugs to make it revenue ready. What are the steps that you have to take to get to that point?
Yeah, what we're been doing right now is to make this shareable, even within the application itself, and it's not something where if a bunch of investment bankers join this application, they're not competing with one another. So what we've really tried to do is provide this solid foundation of this is a pure play asset to them, and it's free. It's kind of why the hell wouldn't you use this? And hopefully that really just drives users to the platform. One of the things about this industry is everybody is very close, to each other. Right. They call them bullpens. If an analyst joins and I go send him a cool Patagonia vest with a little Opsheet logo on it because he joined my platform first, he's people are going to look at him, at probably 10 p.m. when this package arrives, and all the other analysts and associates in the bullpen are where did you get that? And 20 of them are going to be I'm going to join Opsheet. So we're trying to just make this that kind of atomic network of growth. And we think that 8 to 10,000 users is kind of the goal for October. Then it's just talking to people that are using it and getting their feedback. What things would they change? And I think there's tons of founder assets out there that everybody will kind of say the same thing is talk to customers. You should be talking to 10, 15 of them a day. Right. And that's what I'm trying to do. And what problems do they have? Were those similar to my problems while in banking? And one of the good things is that, there's kind of two sides to this industry of there's the advisors, the people that are selling businesses, and then there's the buyers. buyers are just knocking down the door to this thing. Like I don't have to pitch a single person in private equity or family office, people that are interested in buying businesses, because this is what they've been like praying for. So, but bankers, it's, I have to like push them into it. And it's kind of a marketplace in a way. You got to sell it to investment bankers and show like the value that it'll bring, and like, why wouldn't you use it? It saves you time, saves you effort. That's like really like what most of that time will be spent over the course of there's months and months ago to, all through October, November. And there will be other problems that persist and other problems that arise. And we just gotta like come up with a solid foundation that like we can tackle them quickly and efficiently, whatever those may be. What I'm still trying to learn is, who should I talk to every day? Are there applications out there that exist that allow you to create a pipeline for you to people that don't know that Opsheet exists? That's the biggest hurdle, is like, just trying to put users onto this thing. I'd be happy, very, very happy, if 10% of people that are institutional M&A professionals, just 10% of people knew about this. That's a pretty high number. I think it should be much higher. I want every, institutional M&A person in banking, private equity to know about this. I want every single one of them to know. Just reaching them. I mean, these are people that get 1,000 emails a day. They are constantly busy.
Right.
It's probably the hardest target user base to ever fucking tackle. So, are there ancillary kind of other, methods to get to them? There's no one way to do it. It completely depends on your user base and like that demographic, their persona. Because a managing partner of a major private equity firm is going to use this application much, much differently than an analyst at an investment bank. Really think about like what buckets that all of those personas kind of fit in, and how can you provide value to each one of those buckets,
right.
And just build something.
Well, Mike Rumelhart, episode 1 is done, man. Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thanks, brother. You're the man.